A congressional hearing that was supposed to be about budgets erupted into one of the most explosive clashes we've seen in years. Rep. Glenn Ivey didn't just raise questions, he launched a direct assault on the Justice Department's credibility, and he put Pam Bondi right at the center of the storm. What unfolded wasn't just a debate over numbers, it was a reckoning over national security, gun violence, and political hypocrisy, all playing out in real time while the world watches the United States confront new threats abroad. It all started when Ivey zeroed in on the most sensitive issue of the moment, staffing cuts inside the FBI and ATF.
What response would you give to them with respect to the steps that you're taking to make sure not only that we stay safe, but we get even safer and do even more to get violent offenders off the street and get the guns off the street before the violent offenders get them?
So first, Congressman Ivey, you're a former prosecutor, and I'm smiling because I could see that in some of your questions. Thank you for those questions. I'm going to try to answer them all in order of how you ask them. You ask about the FBI, our budget, and Director Patel clarified that in front of the Senate, I think, and our budget includes $10.1 billion, 12,926 agents for the FBI.
I think clarification would be gentle. It was a complete flip-flop on what he said when he was here.
So
And he was asked 3 times by
prioritized.
Ms. DeLauro just to make sure that he was right about what he had said when he was
They
testifying.
prioritize realignment of personnel to the field to carry out national security, which you just talked about, intelligence, criminal law enforcement, and criminal justice missions.
Can I do-
The
can I
budget,
do
wait,
this?
can I just keep,
If-
I only
if-
have 34 seconds to
I've
answer you,
got
and I
3
really
quick
want to
questions
answer.
for you, and I'd love
You're
to get.
asking 3
I'd love to-
questions
I'd
and you
love to
haven't
get
let
your
me answer
answers.
one.
I'd
I
love to
wanna
get your
talk about
answers in
Niven.
writing. Quick questions.
Niven,
When you were the Attorney General in Florida,
Chairman, can I
you
answer the
offered-
question?
You offered, after the Parkland shooting, I believe this is my time, under the rules, and I had,
Stop the clock.
can we stop the clock?
Stop the clock at a different.
Mr. Chairman,
Into a filibuster.
what I just said was, if you could submit your answers in writing, that would be great. I don't think I've made any kind of statement that's been accusatory with respect to her or her professional reputation. There's been no attack on her. These were just questions that were asked. I'm seeking the answers in writing, which would be great. But I have a couple others that I'd like to ask too, and we'll do them on. No, it hasn't. You cut me off when there were 30 seconds left. Yeah. So. Well, that's true too. A couple of you all went over like a minute and a half.
Over almost 2 minutes.
I just would like my 30 seconds back. And then if she can submit answers in writing, that'll be fine. But, but I want to get these questions in while she's here.
Go ahead.
I want to ask the questions and she can submit the answers. This is my 5 minutes. I get to do it the way I want to do it. Under the committee rules and under the House rules. These are my 5 minutes. And as I said, I have not been disrespectful to this witness. I have not. Or
Use up his time to ask his questions and she can see.
I feel like he did. I feel like he did.
okay. When you were the Attorney General in Florida, after the Parkland shooting, my understanding is that you moved to ban gun sales to people under 21. Is that a position that you would take now as the Attorney General? I have a bill, HR 2368, which does something like that. I would be interested in if you'd be willing to co-sponsor or support that bill. You also moved to enact red flag laws, allowing a judge temporarily to confiscate weapons when he or she viewed that the person was at risk of hurting himself or someone else. Is that a position you would continue to support now? And the last one is ghost guns. Ghost guns, I don't think you took a position on it back when you were the AG in Florida, but we've had 2 bills come through here in the Congress, all Democratic co-sponsors. I think there's no argument that ghost guns have any, appropriate use on the street. They only help criminals avoid prosecution. Would you support a legislative ban on ghost guns? And with that, I yield back.
Thank you, Chairman Rogers.
On paper, the Justice Department's new budget looks like a streamlining effort, a tightening of resources in an era of fiscal restraint. But Ivey made clear that this wasn't just accounting, it was dismantling law enforcement at the very moment America can least afford it. Just weeks after a U.S. military strike on Iran, when tensions overseas had already spilled into national security briefings, Ivey accused the department of gutting its ability to protect Americans at home. In his words, there isn't a worse time to pull agents off the street. That wasn't a suggestion, it was a warning. The congressman reminded everyone in that room that even before the Iran crisis, the FBI was already sounding the alarm. Director Christopher Wray had sat in the same chair and practically begged lawmakers for help. He said the Bureau was short more than $1 billion. He warned of over 2,400 positions that needed to be filled immediately, and yet here was the Justice Department proposing a budget that didn't just ignore those needs but cut deeper. Ivey described it bluntly, a budget that fails to meet the moment, a budget that leaves the country blind and vulnerable when sleeper cells and domestic terror threats are no longer hypothetical but very real concerns. The timing couldn't have been worse, but Ivey didn't stop with numbers. He turned his fire directly toward the one person sitting across from him, Pam Bondi. Once the Florida Attorney General who made headlines after the Parkland tragedy for supporting tighter gun restrictions, she now sat silent as the Justice Department's representative, defending cuts that undermined the very protections she once championed. And Ivey knew exactly how to press that contradiction. He called out her own record, drawing a sharp line between her past and present. After Parkland, Bondi had supported raising the age to purchase firearms to 21. She backed red flag laws that gave judges authority to remove weapons from individuals who posed a clear danger. Back then she said it was about protecting lives. But now, when asked whether she'd still support those positions or even co-sponsor his own bill, H.R. 2368, which reflected the very reforms she once praised, her silence was deafening. The air in that hearing room shifted when Ivey moved from statistics to ghost guns. These are weapons with no serial numbers, no traceability, often assembled from kits that can be bought online. Law enforcement officers have said again and again that they are a nightmare for solving crimes, and Ivey hammered Bondi on this exact point. He reminded her that when she was Attorney General she never took a firm stance on ghost guns. Now, as a DOJ representative under scrutiny, she was dodging again. He asked her directly, would she support a ban? Would she stand with him against weapons that, in his words, only help criminals avoid prosecution? Bondi's evasions only fueled the tension. She tried to pivot back to the budget figures, repeating the department's line that $10.1 billion and 12,926 agents were sufficient. But Ivey was ready for that. He pointed out that those numbers contradicted what the FBI had already told Congress just weeks earlier. He called it a flip-flop. One day DOJ claimed it was desperately short on resources. The next, Bondi was defending cuts as if nothing had changed. To Ivey, this wasn't just a miscalculation, it was a dangerous deception, and the stakes were spelled out clearly. Ivey explained that reducing ATF's NI-BIN program, the ballistic database that connects shell casings to guns, wasn't just bureaucratic trimming. It was sabotaging one of the most effective tools for solving shootings. He reminded everyone that this very system had been critical in solving major crimes, including high-profile attempts on political figures. Without it, investigations would stall, shooters would walk free, and local police who rely on federal resources to fill the gaps would be left powerless. For Ivey, that wasn't theoretical. It was life or death. Adding weight to his argument, Ivey pointed to the people sitting just feet away inside the hearing room. Grassroots groups like Moms Demand Action and community advocates who had lost loved ones to gun violence were present, listening closely. Their very presence underscored that this wasn't a dry policy debate, it was about families living with the consequences of political choices. Ivey's words echoed what they had been saying for years: weakening federal oversight of gun dealers, cutting inspections, and scaling back enforcement wasn't neutral policy. It was an open door to more illegal weapons flooding America's streets. That's when the hearing descended into open conflict. Ivey pressed Bondi for clear answers. She dodged, he interrupted, and the chairman tried to intervene. Calls to stop the clock echoed as arguments broke out over procedure. Bondi accused Ivey of being disrespectful. He fired back that he was simply demanding accountability. The room turned chaotic as accusations of filibustering flew, and members fought over whether Ivy was entitled to keep questioning. In those heated moments, the spotlight wasn't just on policy, it was on credibility, respect, and who the public could actually trust to tell the truth. What made it even more damning for Bondi was the contrast Ivy kept drawing between her past and present. He reminded her again and again that after Parkland she had positioned herself as a champion of reforms. She spoke about raising the age for purchases, she praised red flag laws, and she painted herself as someone who was willing to break with hard-line voices to save lives. Now when asked if she would stand by those same principles, she couldn't give a straight answer. To Ivy it wasn't just a policy reversal, it was hypocrisy laid bare on the congressional record. The more Bondi tried to stick to the script, repeating that the budget realigns personnel to meet priorities, the worse it looked. Ivy framed it not as realignment, but retreat. He argued that in the shadow of international unrest, in a climate where sleeper cells and domestic extremism were rising threats, the Department of Justice wasn't stepping up, it was stepping back. And in his final remarks, he delivered the line that cut through the noise: "This isn't a hearing, this is a reckoning." What viewers saw that day was more than a clash between a congressman and an official. It was a stark reminder of how political choices ripple out into everyday lives. Do we accept explanations that sound neat on paper but collapse under scrutiny? Do we let leaders rewrite their own history and dodge accountability? Or do we demand that when lives are at stake, the answers are clear, consistent, and real? Rep. Glenn Ivy made sure those questions didn't go unanswered. He pressed Pam Bondi until the cracks in her defense were impossible to ignore. He laid out the numbers, the contradictions, the policies, and the stakes, and when the hearing ended, one truth remained while Bondi deflected: Ivy exposed. So now the question shifts to you. In times of crisis, when security is fragile and political spin is everywhere, what do we accept, comforting words or uncomfortable truth? That's the choice Ivy put before the nation, and it's the choice that will keep echoing long after this hearing fades from the headlines. And if this hit home, if you believe accountability matters as much as security, then make sure you don't just watch, be part of the conversation. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more breakdowns of the stories others won't tell you straight. We're not done. Not even close. Stay sharp. Stay loud.